Okay. Good morning, everyone. Give a sec for everyone to kind of cycle in. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to our CEJA office hours. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Mikhail English. I'm with ICSPS, and I will be your tech guide and moderator as we go along today's session. I just, again, want to thank you guys for being here, and I'm going to pass it off to Larry Dawson to get us going today.
Okay, thank you, Mikhail. All right. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Larry Dawson. I'm the Northern Regional Administrator for the CEJA Workforce Programs. And as we are making our way into renewal season, we thought that it was important to dedicate today's Technical Assistance Tuesday to kind of providing you information about the process. Some of you on the call, this will be your first time. Others have been through the process, and much of this will be very similar to, or almost exactly, but with a few changes to what occurred last year. And so we want to make sure that everybody is kind of up to date and prepared and familiar with all of the documents that you will need to prepare to get through the renewal process. And so with that, we'll go into our first slide. All right. So again, as we get into renewals, DCEO has full intention to offer 12-month renewals for all of the CEJA grant awards. The renewal will be based on grantee performance and a review of the proposed new year or next year rather, project work plan and budget. We will provide guidance and information to all of the grantees about how your performance will be assessed over the next 12 months. And each grantee will undergo a technical assistance compliance review coordinated by the DCO CEJA team. And this will include a review of the grant scope of work, project work plan, expenditures, grantee procedures, and other documents. So it's essential to assess the status of the project and inform the overall grant renewal negotiations. And it will take place at some point between now and to include April, May, June, and July. Your regional administrator and/or grant manager will be the one who you should look for a communication from with regard to the date on which your TA is going to take place. And it can also be thought of as a precursor to formal or compliance monitoring. Some grantees, I think as we've talked about in this TA Tuesday venue before, will be getting formal monitoring and others will be getting technical assistance visits or reviews. Some of them will take place virtually prior to the renewal process. So you'll get, either one or the other. And our team has already started some of these reviews. You'll be getting a letter, as I mentioned, pretty soon, informing you of when your review will take place, whether that's a TA or a monitoring, and any documents that are needed and where you can upload those to. Oops. All right, there we go. And so the grant assessment, what are we looking at? We'll be reviewing your fiscal and administrative procedures, your program design, as well as implementation process of your program, participant eligibility, activities that are happening with each one of the participants, and the outcomes of your participants. And we won't be looking at your entire participant list, but there will be a sample of participants drawn, and we'll ask for you to provide the file information for each one of those individuals in the sample. We'll also be reviewing your grant expenditures and your planned versus actual numbers, which is much similar to the activities and outcomes tab in your monthly reports and the plan versus actual report on the CEJA reporting system, as well as any other elements such as how well you're coordinating with your other partners, be that navigators, hubs, ClimateWorks. So our renewal approach is just to consider the grant renewal as a part of a grant amendment or modification request as outlined in section 22.4 of your grant agreement. Most grants will require a date extension, budget modification, scope of work, project work plan updates, and we'll review these documents in a bit of detail later in this presentation. So regarding grant extension and the dates, these extensions are to allow for your administration of the program for an additional year. So most of the CEJA workforce hubs and ET or Energy Transition Navigator grants will be extended to June 30th, 2027, which is the last, the last program year of this first cycle of CEJA workforce grants. And most of the CEJA ClimateWorks grants will be extended to May 31st, 2027. And the program years are different because they're laid out in the legislation differently. And so that's what our plan is on renewing these grants through their designated end of program year dates. So budget modifications. The grantees may request additional funding to pay for allowable grant activities through the extended term of the grant agreement. And to do this, you must complete and submit uniform budget template, modification and narrative budget justification, project the amount of funds from the current budget that will be available at the end of the current grant term, which we're calling basically, the leftover funds at the end of the program year. And I guess the technical term that we use for those in the budget documents is carry-in funds. And how much carry-in funds do you anticipate will be available for the next year's grant activities? And DCO will provide additional funds for the next year of operations on top of those carry-in funds that you're bringing in from this year. And we'll review the template and kind of how it's to be used for this process towards the end of the presentation. The grantee scope of work. The grantees will be required to update the grant agreement scope of work as applicable. All grantees should review the Exhibit A and update any of the project details that have changed or will change in the next grant year. Review Exhibit D also and update this in conjunction with any project work plan activities and outcome updates that you need to make. Now, Exhibit D is the program measures or performance measures and standards that are identified in your project work plan. So keep in mind that your work plan is the document used to outline these activities. For instance, the training cohorts that you'll have, where they'll be located, and the numbers of people that you plan to run through your training projects, and that's throughout the term of the grant. And one thing I wanted to highlight here as well is for particularly for those who are in their first year of grant administration, is that as the grant gets modified or extended, the planned numbers that you have are looked at cumulatively because this is all technically one grant. So as we move into renewing into, for some, year two, for others, year three, the numbers that you plan for this next year have to include those numbers that you plan for in the current year. Oh, I think I'm at the right place. Yeah. And so we talked about the work plan a bit. And so all grantees will be required to submit an updated project work plan that forecasts the project activities and outcomes through the end of the initial grant date and through the end of the upcoming grant renewal. And I'll show this document in a moment so you can kind of get an idea if that sounds confusing. You need to also reflect adjustments to the cohort pace and staffing levels, align with the new funding requested for the next year of the grant, as well as including any known changes such as training locations, your staffing plan, any partnerships to execute on your training programs, or anything else of note that we need to know that's germane to your administration of the grant. And to kind of get a better idea of the work plan and how it's set up, the work plan document it has 5 tabs labeled um, as attachments, as you'll see here in a moment. But each one of the tabs must be completed. You have the project summary, which identifies the kind of general overview of how your program design is set up. Um, it has the next tab is the outcomes and activities, which identifies the numbers of individuals that you will be engaging as applicants, enrollees, the kind of the characteristics of those individuals, how many folks you anticipate will be coming from R3 versus EJ communities, as well as the outcomes at the end. And then you've got the curriculum plan, which details the specific uh, bridge and job specific trainings that you'll be offering, as well as detail on the numbers of hours for each one of the various modules that comprise that plan. Your staffing plan, identifying in two different tables. The first table is the specific staff that are a part of your organization with information on their title, role, and contact information. And then the bottom of that talks about your partners and key staff that they have working on this grant, and their associated contact information. And then finally, the implementation timeline for activities that essentially kind of walks us through how you plan to implement from the beginning of the program year to the end, which includes things like, if your staff that you need to hire, um, or if there are, specific key events that you are having for outreach or recruitment, for instance, if you are planning to open a new or change training locations and the timing on that, and those are the kinds of things that you would list in that implementation timeline. And and so then we'll move into the documents required for all of this. And the grantees must submit all these documents to DCEO by no later than April 17th, which is essentially a month from today. The written modification request letter with a brief description of the new year activities provided on the grantee letterhead and signed by an authorized signator or attestation of signatory or authorized designee. There'll be the uniform budget modification template, which we need to have in Excel format. Please make sure that the certification tab is signed and submitted. And since the certification tab is part of that Excel workbook, one of the things that you can do there is just to either print it out, sign it, and turn it to a PDF separately and send back to us separate from the Excel workbook rather. Or if you would like to digitally sign that in a PDF, and you can send that back to us as well. But the key thing here is we need the budget modification template document to be submitted as an Excel workbook, and the certification sheet or tab that's signed needs to be submitted separately. Then also the scope of work modification document and the project work plan, which we'll see here momentarily. Submission instructions. We recommend that the grantees begin the next year's planning ASAP. Connect with the DCO CEJA team if you have any questions or if you're planning any significant changes to your program plan or program design, which is summarized in the project work plan. Discuss these work plans with your CEJA regional administrator, which for the North is myself, Larry Dawson. Central is Nate Keener, and the Southern region is Michelle Cerruti. Or your grant manager, which for the time being is Connor Bertrand, and will be supported by other members of the team. And have these submitted to us before the deadline, or send them as complete submissions with remaining modification documents. And again, all the submissions are due no later than April 17th of this year. Naming conventions. One of the things that DCEO we've been putting a pretty significant amount of effort into is ensuring that our document management and document inventory is efficient. And one of the best ways to do that is have uniform naming conventions for the documents. And so we request that you, as you submit these documents, that you adhere to these conventions. And in each one, you're leading with your grant number. So modification request letter, your grant number, followed by the modification number, and request letter. And we follow that similar pattern through these other documents, the uniform budget modification, scope of work modification, and the work plan. And where do you send all these documents? All the documents should be sent to the email address ceo.oet.cjagrants@illinois.edu. Okay. And so let's take a quick look at some of these documents that have been referred to here. Uh-uh. Is that, can you see, can try to drag it over. Can you guys see the letter document?
Not yet.
We, c-
Not
yeah,
yet.
not yet.
Okay, huh, strange.
It worked before.
Yeah, it sure did. I swear it did. All right, let me see. Let me stop the share here. Oops. Days going. This is always my most favorite part of the transition where you have to pull up different documents aside from the PowerPoint. Let's see here.
It can get tricky when there's a few.
Right, right. So I think this is it. All right, now let me know if you see documents being dragged into the screen here. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So what's important to note here is that on each of these documents is that we try to highlight the areas that you as grantees or the person in your organization who's handling these documents needs to update. And we're prompting you for what specific information needs to be updated on these in they're highlighted here in yellow. And so the key thing is just to ensure that you make sure that each one of these areas is updated from the grant number through your organization, the grantee name, all the way down to providing the contact name, contact email, as well as providing us with the authorized signator and the signator's title. And oh, almost forgot, and the date at the top of the letter there. That is our modification request letter. And the next thing is the budget modification template. Let's see if we can get that dragged over. Okay. Here, the same general method continues of making sure that you update the areas in yellow. We've got enter your cost, your indirect cost rate, as well as here where we want to try to ensure that the projected expenditures that you really honestly think that you will have by the end of this program year is what you want to put here, which allows us to be able to calculate your total grant minus these expenditures. Your projected expenditures will lead to the projected carry-in, and all the rest of these numbers will be filled in by what you put in the specific other tabs, and they all feed into this calculation here. So for instance, if we go to section A, again, organization name, UEI, the grant number, and then we come down here to where we have the personnel salaries, information, travel, equipment, supplies, telecom, training, and education, filling in all of these fields. So if we go to the, for instance, 1A, where you have the specific staffing pattern with the name of the individual. Let's say Larry Dawson, position is outreach staff, and the wage basis, the percentage of time for the individual on this grant, and the length of time. And then we'll calculate the personnel cost and all of that uh, associated here. So we've got also 1B, 2A, 2B, your travel costs, equipment, supplies, on through the document. It's a similar method that all of the yellow areas of the spreadsheet need to be updated. So please keep your updates to the yellow areas, not in the gray. Typically, the gray areas are where our formulas and calculations are taking place, so just in the yellow area. And also wanted to highlight here, if you have any something that's changing or new or needs some explanation, that's what the narrative area at the bottom of the sheet is for.
And Larry, if I could interrupt real quick, there were a couple of questions.
Sure.
Um, Someone asked, will we be completing the full budget template or only the changes as we did last year?
I'll kick that one to John.
Yeah. So
Okay.
actually, I want to clarify that last year you did not only include the changes. You provided us with a full budget. And so I think I would take a step backward on the budget. And I'll also note that within the instructions that are sent to you, there are some step by step, um, kind of a process. Okay. So, Larry, if you could pull the budget up again.
Sure. Can you guys see that?
No, it's still a letter. There we go. And if you could make that full screen,
Okay.
great. So, if you can go to the section A tab. Okay. So again, I'm just gonna just this is restating for reinforcement, right? Step one in the process in the instruction is to complete this section A tab, which you are to just put your name and your grant number and your current approved budget. So this is your budget of record. You only highlight or only add information in the highlighted areas in yellow. Okay? That's step one. Step two, click on the renewal analysis tab right next door. Step two includes the instructions on the top here, right? We want you to project your cumulative expenditures through June 30 of 26. Okay. So if you have total cumulative budget for whether it's, your grant was 24 months or 18 months or whatever it is, let's just say that you have a budget, your current approved budget is 200,000, and based on your current expenditures that you've made and your projected expenditures through June of this year, you put down your total amount. So if you think you're going to spend out of the 200,000, you're going to spend 180,000. That's the number that you put into cell C11, right? Your projected amount, total cumulative amount through um, June 30. Now, for ClimateWorks, obviously that's May 31st. But for most other grantees, it's going to be through 6/30. So that's step two. You're putting your projections of where all of your expenditures are going to be through June. Okay. Now, step three is to go into each individual budget line item tab. So Larry, if you can click on line tab 1A again. And then you're going to put in your costs, all of your costs that are going to operate from July 1 of 26 through June of 27. So if you have 10 staff that are going to get paid from July 1 through June of 27, you're going to put all of those costs only for 12 months of this renewal period. And all of your previous costs will be covered under those previous budget documents. In this scenario where we talked about, well, you have an active budget of record of 200,000 for staff, right? You're only going to project to spend 180. Well, then that 20,000 will remain on the budget and will be calculated into the new amount of funding that is required to be added to your grant. Now, all of that process will be done automatically within this budget template. So all you need to worry about is completing those 3 steps. 1, including your current budget of record. 2, going in and projecting the amount of expenditures that you'll have at 6:30. And 3, going to each of these budget tabs and putting in your costs, all of your costs for each budget tab that you will have for the next budget period, 7/1 of 26 through 6/30 of 27.
There we go. Thanks, John.
Sure.
I hope that answers the question. All right. And let's see here. I think the next one.
One more thing, Larry, is
Sure.
just I would just emphasize again, we've provided some flexibility within the template, but do not enter information in the gray cells, only enter information in the highlighted yellows. So everything else, there are formulas and calculations and ties back to different sheets and so on and so forth. If you have trouble with it, definitely let us know. We know it can be tricky, and we'll work with you to figure it out.
It looks like we have a
Yeah.
hand by Carrie Patton. If we have a question.
Yes, in year 1, indirect cost tab, it was separated for barrier versus non-barrier expenses. Then when we got into year 2, it was kind of all calculated as one, but still separate in GRS. So how are we supposed to calculate indirect costs this year so that do we still have to calculate it separately or no?
I think I'll kick that one to John as well.
Yeah, if you go to the renewal analysis tab, Larry,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can see around column H, we have a indirect calculator. So most of you utilize the or I should say not most, but many of you utilize the modified total direct cost. And that calculator will take care of all of the indirect cost calculation. The only thing you need to put in there is highlighted in yellow, which is your rate. And it breaks out those costs based on the formulas and the connections that draw into this worksheet. And Larry, if you can then go to the indirect cost tab on the individual. Yeah, you're gonna have to keep going over a little bit more.
Oops about that.
Yeah, just there we go. Keep going. Okay, yeah. So indirect costs. So you'll see that the indirect cost tab here, and again, this is applicable to the workforce hubs and workforce climate works, not applicable to the navigators or returning residents. So you can plug your ears for right now. But for the climate works and for the hubs, you do not need to worry about this tab because it should be auto calculated. The base will draw from that renewal analysis tab as well as the rate, and it should automatically calculate. If it doesn't and there's something that's wonky, we can work with you to fix it. I also know that if you're a college university, you may not be on the modified total direct cost as your base, and you may have other bases. Larry, if you go back to that renewal analysis tab, we have unlocked the um, the cells there. So you could potentially go into so if your base does not include um, telecom, training, expenditures, all that. Let's say that it's only your staff, your staffing is your base. You could go into cell I-24, I-25 and just delete that component so that the calculation of the base that is included in cell I-28 is correct. Currently, that calculation would be all of those budget elements, the base element amount for the entire in the entire column there. But again, we would let you take that out. But again, that would be the only instance where we want you to do something in the gray areas, if that makes sense.
Are these unlocked, John?
They are unlocked. So you would be able to theoretically delete those. But
Mhm.
but again, unless you have something unless your indirect cost um, base is different than the MTDC, just leave it alone.
And Larry, if you have time, there's a couple of more questions.
Sure.
Or do you want to? Okay, I was like, I didn't know if you wanted to wait till the end. There is one in the chat that says, "Is if our grant is October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2026, will the new 12-month budget period be October 1st, 2026 to September 30th, 2027? And is the deadline to submit still April 17th of 26?"
I think I'll kick that one kick that one to you as well, John.
Yeah, so the answer is it is due on April 17th, and the new term is, or the next year's term is, should be from July 1 of 26 through June 30 of 27. And Diana, definitely jump in here, but one of the challenges of the CEJA programs are that we have multiple programs operating on different timelines, and that we are currently within the first CEJA grant cycle, first 3-year grant cycle. Okay. It's hard to believe that we are preparing for the last year of the first grant cycle. We are currently within DCEO. We are preparing new notices of funding opportunity for all of the work for the CEJA workforce programs that will start brand new. So cycle 2 of the CEJA programs will start on July 1 of 2027. So we're always kind of, I don't want to say year behind, but, we're preparing for, the last year of cycle 1, but then we're also preparing to make award selections for those cycle 2s. And so to make all of this work. We need to get all grantees on the same cycle, so that we're prepared for the NOFO process that will begin in the fall of this year.
That's correct.
Sorry, I can't see anything and I can't see in the chat or anything. So certainly let me know if there's any more hands or
Yes.
items.
It looks like the chat we have pretty answered. Trisha has had their hand up for a while, so if I can let Trisha unmute and put her question out.
Sure. My question is in relation to subaward recipients and main recipient grants. Um, how are we handling those? Because last year, the subaward grant and the main grant didn't reconcile, and I got because it was, second year was, if you needed more money, we'd get you more money. Um, And so it hasn't been an issue, but obviously going into the final year, I'm just wanting to understand how the subaward budget will reconcile to the main budget.
I think I'll have to do a phone a friend and call
Yeah,
John back
sure, sure.
again.
Yeah. So I think it would be just as any of the other costs. So if you have sub awards in the hub budget that Larry's showing right now, that would be in line, 6A or 6B, right? And
There should be
so,
a contractor line.
yeah, yeah. And so if you currently have, um, you know, I'm assuming your current budget, at a minimum covers the costs through the current end date of 6/30 of 26. So it'd go through the same process. So if you're going to continue with your subcontractors of providing that service, for the next period, which would be, basically July 1 of 26 through June 30 of 27, then you would budget those costs in budget line 6A, and that money would be added, to the award minus whatever your carry-in is. But again, you don't have to worry about those calculations. The sheet will do it for you. So once your modification or amendment is approved by DCEO, you would then go back to your subrecipients or contractors and amend their contract as well. In some cases, you may amend it, or in some cases, you may choose just to go year to year on their contract. So your term, it may be just a straight up, okay, it ends on June 30 of 26. And in that case, if you wanted to continue the engagement, you would prepare a brand new contract that would go from, this, term of 7/1 through 6/30 of 27. We'll provide you with that flexibility. So like if you want to renew your subrecipient agreements, or if you want to let them die and come up with a new award, second tier award, then that's fine. We're okay either way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I believe we have one last hand for us to go over if we have time to unmute and go over that question.
Sure.
Awesome. Perfect. Flora?
Good morning. Just a quick question. I understand that the grant term ends on June 30th, but I have a question in terms of performance. So if we are unable to complete our performance by June 30th, and let's just say the curriculum goes over into July, how do we handle that? Is there an extension on performance? How do we handle that?
I would say that is where you can work with your regional administrator to help you to calculate what your performance should be as you estimate it out over the completion of the upcoming program year as well. We recognize that some organizations will kind of have a shorter year one than anticipated. And So for you, the challenge is to look at where you think that you can get to by the end of this program year and to project out the cumulative performance that you can get with your this truncated year plus all of the next program year.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Larry, could you pull up the project work plan just to
Sure,
show that,
sure.
because I think that the way that the team has laid this out has a couple of different columns to kind of demonstrate that. So basically there is a column, and again, hopefully this is familiar to most of you. There's a column there, for your current approved work plan. Then what are your actual projections, currently, right? Because I mean we're looking at the end of March. How are you doing to meet that? And then what are your projections at the end of the end of June? And then what are your projections at the end of June of
Next year.
2027?
Mhm.
So again, these are all cumulative figures, right? And so we understand there may be some challenges or slippage, from your projected to your actual to, where you're at on June 30th of 26. We are interested in having real numbers, and if you are significantly different from your approved work plan versus your projections, so where you end up, or actually where your current is, so where your current numbers are, and then where your projections, you definitely, that's part of our analysis of for your TA reviews, and also monitoring, and kind of goes into our analysis around the renewal as well. We want to have the best information available, real numbers, but then we also want to talk to you, if there is if there's some significant differences there, expect to have a conversation with your RA on that as we move forward with the renewal process.
Thank you very much. It appears that if the performance is short, we probably should be expecting a carry-in as well. They kind of go
Mhm.
hand in hand. So thank you for
Yep.
that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Mhm. Great question. Great question. And since I have it up, I referred to this in earlier slides, but for those particularly who haven't really gone through this process too many times, here is this top cell with the narrative is essentially a summary of your program design, and then right below it, the planned numbers, as John mentioned, through June 30th of 2027, um, for for hubs and navigators, and for climate works that would be through May 31st, I believe. But these are where you can put those numbers, and there's kind of a greater breakdown here where you carry forward those numbers for particularly with the applicants and completers, and the characteristics of those applicants, and then transition outcomes. Here is the curriculum plan sheet where you identify your training programs for those of you who are training grantees, staffing plan, identify your staff who directly work for your organization, and staff that work on this grant through any partners or subgrantees. And then finally, the implementation timeline that identifies key milestones throughout the program year, uh, who's responsible on the staff for that, when generally you expect that to happen. Again, in this date month column, we don't expect for it to necessarily be, November 12th, this is going to happen. But at least if you can provide us, if you can estimate even to the month, that would be great. So yeah, this usually happens in November, or this might happen in February, or whatever, February of 2027, for instance. Those kind of things are what we will be looking for here, that level of detail. I think we might have, I think, jumped over the scope of work modification document. Let me drag that over real quickly in this last few minutes, if I can. So here, over the last year, just wanted to kind of identify that we've made a few changes to the work plan template from what was in the grant document last year, namely the use of the word graduates has been changed essentially to completers, and typically will also include the actual training, actual job specific trainings that you'll be planning to do in conjunction with completers here. And what you'll see here is just an example. These are example numbers that are meant to represent the current, what will be in your current grant. And you scroll down to where you have to make changes. And this is in the performance measures here. You'll notice for some grantees, you will have kind of pre-lined out, I'll say, numbers from the current that are carried forward from the current um, um, budget or current grant. Some of you, they won't be lined out, but what's most important to hear is identified in the side note that we need for you to, in this second table, there's the first table that represents the current year, and the second table is supposed to represent your numbers, your numbers for the next program year. And so we need you to go in here, and if yours are already pre-lined out, or even if they're not, I think the document is formatted to line these out when you enter any numbers. So for instance, here as an example, maybe your original number for year one was 280, but you want to uh, update that and make that 350, and you can enter that number right next to it. For our legal department, they require that we have both numbers here, so don't erase what's currently there. It should just line it out for you, and you can put the current number right next to it, just like as I did here. I think we touched on the work plan already. Got some questions, but now we've gotten to the actual question part of this presentation. So if there are any other questions, now would be the time for them.
There is a question from Carrie Patton. They had their hand up earlier. So if you want to come off of mute and ask your question.
Yes, sorry, I wanted to circle back to the indirect cost, only because we had an issue this year. You know, in year one, the budget tabs were set up so that indirect cost had an A and B tab to separate the indirect cost barrier, non-barrier. Year two, while it separated out the calculation between barrier and non-barrier, on the main Section A tab, it lumps all of it together into just one indirect cost line. So then what happened is the additional indirect cost money for year two was all added to the same, like to the non-barrier indirect cost in GRS. So then when it came time to draw down money for barrier indirect cost, we didn't have enough there. So then had to end up doing a contract modification to modify the budget to then be able to fix GRS. So that was kind of my question too, and making sure that it's separated, because while it's calculating separately, how do you guys know what amount you're going to put into GRS? And I don't know if that happened to anyone else or if it was just us. Just trying to avoid that problem this year.
Yeah,
Thank-
we'll flag that with Connor and the grant managers as we set this up, and it will be set up separately in the GRS side. So you'll see in the indirect cost tab that there are separate, just like year two, and that will be a checkpoint for us to make sure that the budget, when it's entered into the system, does have that separate funds, and so that there's funds added to both. I think in your case, I think we had a technical error in entering that. And so apologize for that. But I think hopefully this next year we'll get it right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And I know that there may be additional questions, but I just wanted to um, mention that just as a quick note of announcements that for those of you who are the energy transition navigators, that the annual report that is due to DCEO is due on April 1st. So be on the lookout for an email from your regional administrator soon on how to submit that report. And also on April 28th, the Technical Assistance Tuesday session for that day will be with our Energy Sense partners to get some feedback from grantees on curriculum revisions for the Clean Jobs curriculum framework for the next year. And for those who attended the Northern Region Roundtable, you were sat through and gave some feedback, and this one on the 28th is targeted to folks who are in the central and southern regions. And there'll be more information to come on that as we get closer to that. But in our waning moments here, are there any additional questions that folks have?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat as of now. The only wondering that some people had is if they're going to be getting these templates and these instructions, and Diana had let everyone know. So if you didn't see that in the chat, you will get these instructions and templates for you to fill out.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. We will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye. All right. It doesn't seem like there are any lasting questions after we finish, so I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you very much, Mikhail.
Yeah, of course. Nice to see you, Larry.
All right. Take